Buy a house, or you'll never see your grandkids. Those were the exact words my new daughter-in-law, Sarah, whispered to me while the wedding band played softly in the background. She stood there in her custom silk gown, smiling for the cameras, while quietly delivering a threat she thought would break me. I am Jennifer Matthews. I am 66 years old, a widow, and a woman who stopped tolerating disrespect a long time ago. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I just looked at her, patted the thick leather folder inside my handbag, and smiled back. To understand how we ended up at this exact moment, you have to look at the day David and Sarah moved into my home. It was supposed to be a temporary arrangement. 6 months, David promised, just until they saved enough for a down payment on their own place before the wedding. I welcomed them. I cleared out the large guest room, emptied half the pantry, and made space in my quiet life. Within a week, the dynamics shifted. Sarah treated my home like a boutique hotel where she was the manager and I was the unpaid staff. She complained about the smell of my morning coffee. She rolled her eyes at my furniture. She even invited her friends over for dinner and expected me to stay in my bedroom so they could have privacy. My son David just looked down at his shoes whenever she overstepped. He worked long hours, exhausted, always trying to keep the peace. He thought if he just kept quiet, everything would smooth over. But peace, bought with silence, is just a delayed war. I wasn't about to become a prisoner in my own home. I didn't argue or raise my voice. I simply observed, gathered my facts, and started setting quiet, unbreakable boundaries. Sarah thought she was dealing with a frail, lonely widow, desperate for company. She was entirely wrong. The first real test of my boundaries happened on a Tuesday evening. I came home from my book club to find a mountain of Sarah's expensive, dry-clean-only clothes piled on top of my washing machine. A sticky note was attached. "Jennifer, please use the delicate cycle for these. Need them by Thursday." I didn't storm upstairs. I didn't yell. I simply picked up the pile of clothes, walked to the guest room, and dropped them right back onto Sarah's perfectly made bed. I left the sticky note on her pillow. When Sarah came down for breakfast the next morning, her face was tight with frustration. "I guess you didn't see my note about the laundry." She huffed, pouring herself a glass of my expensive orange juice. "I saw it," I replied calmly, turning the page of my newspaper. "The washing machine instructions are taped to the lid. You are welcome to use it any time." David shifted uncomfortably at the table. "Mom, Sarah's just really busy with wedding planning right now. It wouldn't hurt to help out." "I am providing free rent, free utilities, and a roof," I answered, looking directly at my son. "I am a host, David, not a housekeeper." Sarah scoffed, crossing her arms. From that day on, I stopped including them in my grocery runs. I cooked portions meant exactly for one person. When they came down to the kitchen expecting a hot meal, they found clean counters and a cold stove. They wanted to act like independent adults when it suited them, but helpless children when it came to chores. I let them feel the reality of their choices. Sarah's frustration grew daily. She tried to freeze me out, giving me the silent treatment, completely unaware that silence was exactly what I enjoyed most. But her entitlement was a disease, and it was about to spread to a part of the house I held sacred. My late husband Thomas had a study on the ground floor. It held his old books, his wooden desk, and a quiet energy that brought me comfort. I kept it exactly as he left it. One afternoon, I returned from the grocery store and found the hallway cluttered with boxes. Heart dropped. I walked into the study to find Thomas's books shoved unceremoniously into cardboard bins. The heavy oak desk was dragged into the corner. Sarah was standing in the middle of the room with a tape measure swiping through her phone. "What is going on here?" I asked, my voice dangerously even. Sarah didn't even look up. "Oh, we're turning this into the nursery. David and I decided that since we'll be staying here longer than expected, we need to prepare. The lighting in here is perfect for a crib. She hadn't asked. She hadn't even hinted. She just assumed she had the authority to erase my husband's memory from my own house. David walked in carrying an empty box. He froze when he saw my face. "Mom, we were going to tell you tonight." "Put everything back," I interrupted. "Excuse me," Sarah snapped, finally putting her phone down. "We need this space. You never even use it. You're just hoarding old junk." I didn't waste time arguing with her. I walked past her, grabbed the tape measure from the desk, and tossed it into the hallway. "David, you have exactly 1 hour to put your father's things exactly where you found them. If you don't, I will hire a crew to pack everything in the guest room, and you can both find a new place to sleep tonight." I turned and walked to the kitchen. I didn't wait to hear their excuses. 50 minutes later, the study was restored. That evening, I drove to the hardware store, bought a heavy-duty padlock, and installed it on the study door myself. I kept the only key. The message was clear: my house, my rules. The padlock incident made Sarah furious, but she changed her tactics. Instead of overt disrespect, she shifted to playing the victim. She began complaining loudly on the phone to her mother about how broke they were, and how unfair it was that I sat on a paid-off house while they struggled. But something didn't add up. David was making a very good salary as a structural engineer. They had no rent and no utility bills. Yet David constantly looked exhausted, picking up weekend shifts. The truth revealed itself on a Saturday morning. David had left his laptop open on the kitchen island while he rushed out to fix a flat tire. The screen was glaring with his bank account dashboard. I rarely snoop, but a specific recurring transfer caught my eye. Every time David's paycheck hit, large sums were immediately funneled into an external account under Sarah's name. Curious, I glanced at the stack of mail on the counter. There were 3 shiny envelopes from high-end department stores and a luxury travel agency addressed to Sarah. I took a closer look. While David was working overtime to save for a house and pay for the wedding, Sarah was draining his accounts to fund a lavish lifestyle. Designer shoes, weekend spa trips with her bridesmaids, expensive dinners. She was systematically emptying his pockets, keeping him panicked about money, all while pushing him to demand my savings for a down payment. I didn't yell. I didn't confront David. He was too deep in the fog to believe me without hard proof. Instead, I quietly sat down and started gathering the mailed receipts she carelessly left in the recycling bin. I matched them with the dates David complained about his dwindling savings. I compiled every single piece of paper, every invoice, and every credit card statement I found in the trash. I placed them neatly into a thick leather folder. I wasn't going to play her game. I was going to end it. As the wedding approached, the tension in the house was suffocating. Sarah was in full bridal mode, demanding perfection from everyone around her. She ordered expensive floral arrangements, upgraded the menu twice, and insisted on a live string quartet. David looked like a ghost. He was constantly checking his banking app, rubbing his temples, and skipping meals to save a few extra dollars. One evening, I found David sitting alone in the dark kitchen. "You look exhausted." I noted, pouring myself a glass of water. He sighed heavily. "The wedding costs keep piling up. Sarah says it's normal, that we just need to push through. But Mom, we don't have enough for the house down payment anymore. Not even close." He paused, looking at me with a desperate, unspoken question in his eyes. Sarah had clearly coached him to ask me for the money. Before he could form the words, I placed a hand on his shoulder. "David, you are a grown man. You make your choices. But remember, a marriage is built on honesty, not just open wallets." I walked away before he could ask for a dime. The next morning, Sarah cornered me near the front door. "David is stressed out," she hissed, her sweet mask slipping completely. You have hundreds of thousands sitting in your savings. Good mothers help their children. Good partners don't bankrupt their future husbands, I replied smoothly. Her eyes widened in shock, but she quickly recovered, her face hardening. You think you're so smart. Just wait, Jennifer. Once this ring is on my finger, things are going to change around here. I smiled politely. I completely agree, Sarah. Things are definitely going to change. I patted the leather folder waiting by my purse. The wedding was 3 days away. I was more than ready. The wedding reception was held at a posh country club that David could absolutely not afford. Crystal chandeliers, towering centerpieces, and a 5-course meal. Sarah played the radiant bride, perfectly working the room, laughing loudly, and making sure everyone noticed her custom gown. I sat quietly at a table near the back, eating my salad and watching the performance. David looked relieved the planning was over, but the financial weight was still visible in the slump of his shoulders. Halfway through the evening, the band took a break. I walked over to the quiet patio to get some fresh air. The door clicked shut behind me, and I turned to see Sarah standing there. The sweet bride act was completely gone. Enjoying the free meal? She asked, crossing her arms. It's a beautiful reception, I answered calmly. She took a step closer, her voice dropping to a harsh whisper. Let's stop playing games, Jennifer. David won't ask you, so I will. You are going to sell that massive house of yours, downsize to a condo, and give us the cash for our down payment. I am not selling my home, Sarah. Her eyes narrowed. She leaned in, her voice dripping with venom. Listen to me very carefully. Buy a house, or you'll never see your grandkids. I will make sure David cuts you off completely. You will die alone in that old house, and we won't even visit. It was the ultimate threat, the weaponization of future children. She expected me to crumble, to cry, to offer a compromise. Instead, I reached into my bag and pulled out the thick leather folder. I looked her right in the eyes, my expression completely blank. We'll see about that, I whispered. The DJ announced it was time for family toasts. I walked past her, opening the patio door, and headed straight for the stage. The room quieted down as I stepped up to the microphone. David looked up from the sweetheart table, a nervous smile on his face. Sarah hurried back into the room, taking her seat next to him, her eyes fixed on the leather folder in my hands. She thought I was going to cave. She thought the threat had worked. Good evening, everyone. I started, my voice steady, carrying through the silent ballroom. For those who don't know me, I am David's mother, Jennifer. A polite applause rippled through the guests. Weddings are a time for truth, for starting fresh, and for looking toward the future. I continued. I opened the folder. The crisp sound of paper echoed slightly in the quiet room. Just a moment ago, my new daughter-in-law pulled me aside with a very specific request regarding their future. Sarah's face went slightly pale. David frowned, looking confused. She informed me that if I did not sell my home and buy them a house, I would be cut out of their lives and I would never be allowed to see my future grandchildren. Gasps erupted from the tables. Several guests shifted uncomfortably. David dropped his fork, turning to stare at Sarah in pure shock. David, I said, looking directly at my son. You've spent the last 6 months working yourself to the bone. You skipped meals. You missed out on sleep because you believed you were failing to provide for your new family. You thought you were broke. I pulled out the first stack of papers. But before I give Sarah my final answer about my house, I think you deserve to know where your down payment money actually went. I stepped down from the small stage and walked directly toward the sweetheart table. Sarah tried to stand up, reaching out to grab the microphone cord, but she tripped on her heavy silk dress. I bypassed her completely and handed the papers to my son. David stared at the papers in his hands. They were highlighted bank statements and copies of receipts I had pulled from the recycling bin. What is this? he asked, his voice trembling. "Mum, that is a record of every transfer made from your payroll account to Sarah's private checking account over the last 6 months." I explained calmly, loud enough for the front tables to hear. "While you were working weekends, Sarah spent $12,000 on designer bags. She spent $4,000 on weekend trips with her friends. She spent your entire house. Fund David." "Give me those!" Sarah shrieked, lunging across the table. David pulled the papers back, his eyes scanning the highlighted lines. The color completely drained from his face. He saw the dates. He saw the exact amounts that matched the days he stressed over his budget. "You told me this money went to the caterer," David whispered, looking at a specific receipt for a luxury spa resort. "You told me the venue demanded extra deposits." "David, she's lying. Your mother faked these." Sarah yelled, panic fully taking over her features. "These are your own mail receipts, Sarah," I replied smoothly. "The ones you carelessly threw in my recycling bin while living rent-free under my roof. I didn't fake anything. I just paid attention." The reception hall was dead silent. Even the waitstaff had stopped moving. Everyone was watching the bride's mask completely shatter. "You had no right to go through my things," Sarah screamed at me, practically foaming at the mouth, confirming her guilt in front of 150 guests. David stood up slowly. The passive, exhausted boy was gone. For the first time in a year, my son stood up straight. He dropped the papers onto Sarah's lap. "We are done," he said. "What do you mean we're done?" Sarah demanded, her voice cracking. "We just got married." "I mean, it's over," David replied, his voice terrifyingly calm. "You didn't just lie to me, Sarah. You stole from me. You made me feel like a failure every single day while you drained my accounts. And then you tried to blackmail my mother." "David, please." Sarah changed her tone instantly, tears welling up in her eyes, playing the victim one last time. "I did it for us. I wanted to look perfect for you. You did it for yourself," he answered. He reached up, untied his expensive rented bow tie, and tossed it onto the table next to the ruined cake. Sarah realized she had lost him. Her sadness vanished, replaced by pure rage. She turned her venom on me. "This is your fault. You bitter, stingy old woman. You couldn't just write a check and let us be happy." I didn't flinch. I just closed my empty leather folder. "I protect what is mine, Sarah. My home, my peace, and my son." David didn't say another word to her. He turned his back on his bride, walked down the center aisle of the stunned reception hall, and pushed through the heavy double doors. It was exactly 8:10 p.m. They had said "I do" at 4 o'clock. Their marriage had lasted exactly 4 hours. The guests began whispering frantically. Sarah's parents rushed the table, looking mortified. Sarah sank into her chair, sobbing aggressively. But the tears were for the money she had just lost, not the man. I didn't stay to watch the rest of the show. My work was done. I slung my handbag over my shoulder, walked out to the valet, and asked for my car. I drove home in absolute silence, feeling lighter than I had in months. The next morning, the sun shone brightly through my kitchen windows. I was sipping my coffee when I saw Sarah's car pull aggressively into my driveway. She hopped out, still wearing her makeup from the night before, marching toward my front door with a scowl. She thought she was coming to pack her things and throw one last tantrum. She stopped dead in her tracks when she reached the porch. Stacked neatly against the brick wall were 5 large cardboard boxes taped shut. I had spent the morning packing every single item she owned. Next to the boxes was a heavy-duty trash bag containing her expensive, dry-clean-only clothes. She grabbed the door handle and pulled. It was locked. I had called a locksmith at 7:00 a.m. Sarah glared at the ring camera, mouthing curses I didn't care to hear. She violently shoved her boxes into the back of her car, slammed the trunk, and peeled out of my driveway, leaving tire marks on the asphalt. I took a slow sip of my coffee. The air in my house finally felt clean. David didn't come back to live with me. He rented a small, cheap apartment across town. He needed to learn how to stand on his own 2 feet, manage his own boundaries, and recover from the financial mess Sarah left him in. He comes over for dinner every Sunday now. We don't talk about the wedding, but he looks healthier, stronger, and more awake. I didn't need a lawyer, a judge, or an elaborate revenge plot to reclaim my life. I just needed a padlock, a few receipts, and the courage to refuse to be a victim in my own home. Now when I sit in my late husband's study, surrounded by his books, and the quiet hum of the afternoon, I am entirely at peace. My house, my rules, my freedom. If this whole experience taught me anything, it's that protecting your peace doesn't mean you have to be loud, and setting boundaries doesn't make you the bad guy. We often think that standing up for ourselves requires dramatic arguments or bitter fights. But sometimes the most powerful thing you can do when someone tries to manipulate you is simply to observe, stay calm, and refuse to play their game. You don't have to set yourself on fire just to keep someone else warm. And most importantly, you never have to buy respect. Real family and real love will never come with an ultimatum. I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever had to set a tough boundary with someone close to you or dealt with a situation like this? Let me know down in the comments. I read every single one. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more real-life experiences about family boundaries and standing your ground, please hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. Thank you so much for watching, and remember, your peace of mind is always worth protecting. See you in the next video.